Hello and welcome to System Gold. This is Randall, and today I'll be talking about Corel Photopaint X7 and the main tools that I use on a regular basis to do animation. The purpose of this tutorial is to show you what these main tools are, give you a basic idea of how they work, and let you get started, try them out, start using them, figure out different ways to use them. So I go to File, New, and I'll do the 8 by 10 inches, 300 DPI always, and no background. Of course, 24-bit RGB. So the first thing I'll show you is over here, the rectangle tool. You click and hold down on it, and it gives you a bunch of options. The rectangle, ellipse are the two I use mostly, but the polygon, once in a while, it gives you a different shape that you might not get, or it would be a lot more difficult to get without manipulating the rectangle, and a line. The path I never use. So I'll show you the rectangle. Now the first thing you need to know is a rectangle has an outline to it. The default is 0, and it will leave it at whatever the last thing you did. The last thing I did had a 10 outline. So when you want to choose the outline color, you left click on a color. So we'll choose black as the outline color, and the inside color will choose white by right clicking. Now when you make it, you just click anywhere you want, hold it down, and drag it to the shape you want. If you want a perfect square, you hold down the control key and it will give you the perfect square. So we're at 28%, so let's zoom in so we can see what 100% looks like. That's a little big. So here's a square. Now, if you're doing something where the border, everywhere you use the border is 10, for example, but occasionally you'll need shapes with 0. You could, each time you do this, change this to 0 and then change it back to 10. But for me, it would be easier just to left-click on the fill color. So you left-click on white, and you make another square, and it's the same color. So those are two different ways. You could keep changing the outline if you want, or you could just simply click on white, left click on white to get a white border. On some animation programs, the border is a separate entity. You could click on the border, change the color of the border, manipulate the border, change the shape of the border and stuff like that. In this program, not. It's all connected. It's all one piece. So just so you know that. The next shape is the circle. And it's the same thing with the border, and it's the same thing with the shape. You hold down control and you get a perfect circle, or you can do ovals and stuff if you let go of that. So this is because I had the white border, and I'll click on blue, and we have a blue border. The next one is the polygon, and this is where you're making a shape. Ordinarily I would use a bunch of these and manipulate them, but this will get closer to the shape you want right from the get-go. But there's something that you need to know about this. On the polygon tool, there's a bunch of things up here, and it usually starts out with the butted corners, which is the one I don't like. But I'm going to give you an example. The one that we just did was mitted corners. And then let's go to the next one, which is rounded corners. I think rounded corners is my favorite. That's rounded corners. This is beveled corners. And we'll take a look at them. This doesn't have to be perfect. And butted corners. This is the one I don't like. But I don't want to influence your opinion of it. You may love butted corners. Okay. So when you're talking about corners, it has to do with the corners, obviously. So on this first one, it's pointy. And that was the mitted corners. Pointy, nice pointed corners. The second one was rounded. These look nice as well. The third one is beveled. And these are just like kind of like you cut off the corner. It's not rounded. It's just cut off. And I could see a place for those. And then there's this. This just looks like who screwed this up. And then I find myself fixing these corners. I'm not sure what use this would have. I can't think of any unless you're doing some kind of font that looks maybe you like that look for a font or something. So those are that, and then there is the line, and you want to left click to choose the color that you want for your line. I'll choose red, and you also want to choose an outline because it is the line is an outline. So I had the last thing I did was 15, so we'll do 15. Now there's two ways to use a line. You can click and hold it and go to where you want to go and just let go. Or you can click and let go and then click. And when you do that, it assumes that you keep going. Click and let go. Click and hold it. Yeah, once you start going that way, you can't click and let go. So when you're done, you just double click and then you go. So it's click, let go, or click, let go. I did that one already. Click, let go, and then click, let go. And then you can keep going until you're done. And then you double click. So those are all I use on that. There's one more path. I don't use that. I haven't found a use for it. When I do, I will definitely talk about it. The next thing I want to show you is the eraser. Now first I want to show you the object pick tool. Now each of these, as you notice, there are 15 layers. Each of these are on their own layer. So if I'm going to do something, if I click on, if this is selected, which you can see it's selected over here, if this is selected and I try to erase this, nothing happens. The only thing I could erase on here is the one that's selected. I can't select them all and try to erase them all. I could select them all and combine them, and once they're combined, then I can erase them all. But when they're separate, I could only do something, erase, manipulate, put a mask on, whatever, cut, paste, copy, when it is selected. So first I'm going to select this one. And actually, I'm going to put a background so you can see what I'm doing. Let's put a black background by right-clicking on black, and I'm going to make another square rectangle. I'll put it over the whole thing. Now you can move these layers around. Obviously I don't want this on top, and I could click on each individual one that I want and Control X to cut it, Control V to paste it. When you paste it, it automatically goes right up to the top. But it's easier just to move these within here. So you could, in this case, so I could just, you click on it once so it's highlighted, then you click on it and hold it, and then you drag it to where you want. I'm going to drag it all the way to the bottom. I'm not sure what's object 1. Usually object 1 is the background. Okay, so I got all these. Let's zoom in. While I'm zooming in, you have your center scroll on your mouse that zooms in and zooms out. Zooms in and zooms out. But the problem is, you're looking at something, say I'm looking at this piece right here, and I zoom in because I want it bigger. It's zoomed in, but now I can't see it. So let's zoom out again, and there's this tool here called the zoom tool, and you will zoom in on the exact piece that you're interested in. So in this case, I want this circle. I just keep clicking on the circle, and the circle keeps coming closer to me. If I want to zoom out, I could right click, and then I can go ahead and zoom in on something else if I want. Now, this might be perfect zoomed in, but I want more of this in the picture. Zooming in or out will not do anything for that. But you can click on zoom and hold it down, and there's another option called pan. And you click and hold it down, and you can move these around however you want. So that there may be something that you want to use as a reference, and you want to create something right next to it. So you might move it over like that. And you could do that with these things, but it's a pain, and sometimes you can't find what you're looking for, and you end up having to zoom out because you cannot find it. You're just sitting there searching and searching because it's such a big platform. Okay. So while we're here, let me select. Now, the first thing you want to do when working with something is select it. And as you saw, I just clicked on this and nothing happened because this was already selected. When I just clicked on that, this is already selected. So sometimes you have to click outside of the image where there's nothing to unselect, to deselect. Or if that's not working, you can just go over and find the object you want. So in this case, it's 7, and you can tell by these little squares are around it. That means it's selected. So I'm going to show you the erase tool. And the erase tool, basically, there's 2 different types of erase tools, not including all these different patterns and stuff, which I rarely use, but once in a while you might find something that will do the trick. But there's 2 different kinds. There's the feathered erase, and there's a few presets, and then there's the solid erase. The feathered erase, as you will see, gives it a kind of a feather, and you could use this as an effect on something. And you can see how it gives it kind of almost like a shading effect because it works in the background with what you're doing. The solid erase does pretty much the opposite. It just cuts it off. And these are presets, but you're not stuck with those. You could select the type that you want, and then you could type in 500 or 20 or whatever you want. Here's 500. And when you do a big feather, you can get a, that doesn't mean you have to erase the whole thing. It just means that you go to the edge and it's a different type of feather. So let's try it on this. And you can see how subtle that feather is. Very subtle. And that might be an effect that you're looking for. So let's put it back at a reasonable size. Okay, so that's erasing. The next thing I want to show you is the masks. Now the masks are great. You can select something and copy it. First you have to make sure it's selected. So when using this tool to copy this, if this is selected, then nothing's going to happen. So I have this, I have the mask around this object, and sometimes you want a mask around something and then you want something else. So maybe I want to square this exact size, but I want it the color of this background. So I could select the background, but nothing will happen until you go back to the tool. So I select the tool. Now I could do Control C, Control V. Control C is to copy, Control V is to paste, Control R is to remove this mask, or you can just click on the tool again and click outside of the image and it'll remove it. And now I choose the select tool and I can move this away. And it's hard to see against the background, but maybe we want to get rid of this guy. So we put this guy here to get rid of it as an idea. So what's cool about this mask is that you may want to choose something. I want to choose this size, but I want to copy it off of this for some reason. So there's this tool here where I could move the entire mask. I could also manipulate the mask. By grabbing the corner, I could pull it. And make it the exact size I want. make sure that this is selected. If this is what I want to take, go back to the tool. If you're on this, it won't work. If you're on this, it won't work. You have to be on the actual tool to copy, to cut, to paste. So I'm going to cut this and paste it. And maybe that's the effect I want. So going through, there's a bunch of different masks that you could use. Here's this, the circle. Before I go back past the rectangle, these are all the same as the ones down here where you can make a rectangle or square, but if you hold down Control, you make an exact square. And the same thing happens when you use the circle. It's an oval, or if you hold down Control, you can make a perfect circle. Then this tool, of course, can move you where you want to go. But before you do anything, you make sure that you have it selected. So let's click outside and re-click on it. There. See, now we know it's selected because these are lit up. Now we'll get into what those are and how to use them later. In fact, this time, let's make it a little closer to the exact size of the object. So on this tool, you could change the size of the mask. And say we just want the center part. And we could even move it by using the arrows to move it and make it more centered. But then when everything's said and done, you get it perfect. You have the object selected that you want. You go back to the tool, and then you Control X to cut. Now, why didn't that work? There we go. It didn't work because it wasn't selected. So I just cut it. Now I could paste it if I want. Put it back here. The next thing is the magic wand, and I use this a lot as well. And what it is it definitely works most when there's like a border or there's a part of your image that's a solid part of your image, all the same color. So if these were all one image, it would only work on one. You click on the white on an area, and all the white in that area would be selected. But if these three were connected, I can hold down, I think it's the Control key, and then select each one individually. Let me do that. I'm going to combine these three. So to do that, you click, see, it's going to select the background image. So you're going to click outside of whatever image. And if that's not possible, you just click on the image, hold down Shift, and go to each one. Let's try it. I'll do all four. Okay, so to combine them, you do Control Alt down, and that makes them into one flat layer. So if you want to select the white in all of them, you select the white. See this one, depending on your tolerance, it will adhere to the white. See, it's starting to go gray, so it's not going to go to that. But if you change the tolerance, it'll go more. And if you hold down the Shift key, then you can hit all the white parts. And if you continue to hold down the Shift key and you start selecting other areas, you can do that as well. Even though it's not white, but they're all the solid colors. But they're just a different color gray. So I wanted all that selected, but I couldn't do it because it wasn't all white. But if you hold down the shift key and you keep clicking, you can make it happen. Okay, so I want to change colors. Let's say I want to change the background to red. I have all these selected. What I can do is, these are actually on the object. I have the object selected. So I could actually change this on the object. It wouldn't affect the blue. Or I can copy this and paste it and change the color of the new pasted object, which is a separate layer. So that I can manipulate that separately if I want. And then later on, if I'm happy with it, I could combine them. So I'm just going to change the color on the actual object here, just to show you what it's like. To choose a color, if there's a color somewhere in what you're working on that you want to use, that might not be a regular color, you use this. And anytime you're selecting a color, you're selecting left click for the border and right click for the fill. So I could do left click and right click, but I'm doing a fill, so the only thing that matters is the fill, the right click. Or you could just go over here and choose a color. So I'm going to choose, let's choose different colors. I'll choose blue for one. And when you choose it, you can select this fill tool, and it'll only fill in the selected area, but it won't fill in all these areas. I don't have to hold down a shift key or anything. I can just hit each one separately. So that kind of gives it a cool black effect, but only if the background is black. So let's try different colors that we can use. So even though I'm used to it, it's still right click and left click. Now I do Control R to get rid of the masks. Now there are other masks that I use less frequently. The freehand mask is something I use if I need, something needs to be shaved off of it. Like this, I erased it, and it's a solid erase, but it doesn't, I'd rather have a straight line there. So I might use this tool to, I click here, and I realize that it's over too far. But let me get the correct angle. Let's try that again. I click here. Okay, you have this. Then you go to this tool, and I could actually just bring it over. If you don't want to do that, I could actually click on the object and move the object over to the mask. Once I have that, I go back to the tool and Control X to cut it, or I could just press delete, and then I can Control V to paste it if I want it back for some reason, or I can just delete it. So that's what that tool is for. That's what I use it for. These other ones are basically, if you don't want to take the time and go close, you could just select something around it. Go as close as you can, but you don't have to worry about getting too close. And it'll pull the mask into it. And then you can do Control C, Control V, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, Control R to get rid of the mask, and now you have a copy. This other one doesn't always work great. It's the same idea, except you start off and then you kind of just move it around. Now this is a very solid, straightforward object, so it's actually working very well. Sometimes it doesn't work so well. Okay, it doesn't seem to want to continue, so I'm going to click here, click again, and continue on. If it stops moving, I guess you just have to click and click again. And you work your way all the way around, click, click, and now we got the mask. So this is kind of a similar thing, except it's more manual to do the magnetic mask. if I use a mask, I'll use the lasso over the magnetic mask. So Control R to get rid of it, to get rid of the mask. So that's it for those. I'll just show you the brush mask as well. If you're making, say you want to make kind of bubble letters, so you may decide to make a mask here and a mask here. Hold down the shift so you can do a second one. Make sure this item is selected, this object is selected. Then you go back to the mask, Control C, Control V, Control R, and then you can do something, change the color, stuff like that. So the next thing I want to show you, this I'm just going to mention it. This is just letters. It's the same as Word. You change the font, you change the size, bold, italics, underline, center, to the left, to the right. This other ones you could change how the letters are apart or further away. That's pretty much self-explanatory. You could figure that out yourself. But when there's a word and you want to edit the word, maybe change the color, or maybe, oh, I wanted to capitalize the R, you go back to the letter and you click on the word, and then you can actually just change the letter there, or you could change the color or change anything about it. Change the size, make it bold, change the font, and then later on when I talk about effects, I'll show you how to make effects on words. So this is a paintbrush, and you go up here and you could select what you want. You want airbrush, spray can, pencil, pen, any types of these. And when you select one, then it gives you options as to the points that you're going to use on it. So I selected this. I'll select colored pencil. Now what I've used this before is these annoying corners. I would select the color, left click because it's a border, zoom really in, and then you go back to the paintbrush. And you can color in those corners. But that was before I found out you could just select a different type where you could just do without. See what I mean? Okay, so I showed you fill, I showed you selecting colors, I showed you erase, I showed you these different shapes you could create, how to paint, the text, and that's enough to get you started. So I hope you enjoyed it. I didn't do anything spectacular because this was more about function, and I hope that you got something from it and you can get started. Let me do something quick and easy to get you motivated and in the spirit of things. So I'm going to select a circle, an ellipse, and I'm going to choose black, left click on black, right click on white, right click on white. I'm going to make a perfect circle, and then I'm going to right click on brown, and then I'm going to make another circle. And then I'm going to, I already left clicked on black, so I'm going to right click on black. And go back to my tool. And now I'm going to left click and right click on white. And there's an eye for you. So that's just a quick show of what you can do. And there's lots and lots of different things that you can do. There are tricks and effects and different ways of making something look better. And depending on your style, you can do it in different ways. And I'll show you those different ways. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And I hope you got a lot out of it. And get started. Try out all these tools and see what you can do with it. Thanks.